Hi everyone, this is Harsh. We have today with us Priyank Goel. He is grad and he is currently working in Google as a software developer. We'll be discussing a few things today. Prepare for product-based companies and what is the ideal strategy and how a student must prepare to get into these companies, right? I am adding him to the stream. So let's welcome Priyank today. So hi Priyank, how are you?
Hey, hi Harsh. Thank you so much for having me here. Hello everyone. Hope you're healthy and safe at your
So,
home.
can you
Yeah,
audience like what about your journey from about your journey to Google?
yeah, sure. I'll just start on. I'll start on this in a bit. I'll just introduce myself and then we can start. Cool. My name is Priyank and my hometown is in Bareilly, UP. I did my BTech in Computer Science and Engineering from IIT BHU Varanasi, and I graduated in 2015. Currently, I'm working as a software engineer at Google, and as of now, I have around 5 years of industry experience as a software engineer. Um, Before starting this discussion, I would like to state this as a mandatory disclaimer that whatever I'll be speaking here are my own thoughts and experiences, and I'm speaking this in a personal capacity and not acting on behalf of Google or any other companies that I might mention in this webinar. So yeah, with this, Harsh, I think we can just start. Yeah, Harsh, are
Hello.
you able to hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm able to hear you. So, can you tell us like how did you manage to get into Google and companies have
Uh,
you worked with and how those interviews and just being an engineering
Sorry, Harsh, your voice is breaking. So I'll start with something I'll start with something which is that initial, like how and when did I started coding, and what are the challenges that I faced that time, and I overcome that. So I think that will be a good question to start. Uh, so to answer this, I was not having any coding background before I joined college, and I started coding in college. There was a subject in my first semester where I learned about C programming language. That was a mandatory course, as that time it was there in our semester. So that's the place where I started from, and I write my first code ever. I learned all the basics of C language, like basic things like how you put loops, how you declare variables, how you take inputs and read files, etc., and how does this memory management things works in that language, etc. And after that, I started programming. I started competitive programming. I started preparing on CodeChef and Codeforces after my first semester of college, and I practiced the questions there for a few months, and then I started taking part in coding contests. And then I took part in a lot of coding contests when I was college. So yeah, that's how I started. Regarding the challenges that I faced when I was starting competitive programming, is like the first challenge was obviously around how to start coding. I think this is one of the challenge that every student faces at some point of time. That how to start coding and how to start with the competitive programming at all. So I was no different. I was confused that there exist so many websites, so many languages. So what to choose and how to start and stuff. Thankfully, overcoming this was easy for me because there was a good coding culture in my college. I was having seniors who were really good at coding, and even some of my batchmates were having some prior coding background. So there were coding clubs, and seniors used to take programming related seminars to encourage the coding culture. And so I have to do is to go to the seniors and go to my batchmates and seek guidance from them that how to start on competitive programming. Another thing is that was a challenge that time, that how to keep going, how to not get bored, or how to not get demotivated and keep the wheel rolling. So one thing that worked for me that I would also like to share as an advice here is that work in groups. Always practice in groups. Like just make a group of 5 6 people who are enthusiastic enough for solving problems and do computer programming. While working alone, it's sometimes hard to continue on it, right? You might procrastinate on it, and you can delay it, like you would like to delay it, and you can say, let's okay, let's do it on some weekend or after semester exams or stuff. So I'd say that practice is the key. Your consistency and hard work is something that will determine that how far you'll go. So if we have this misconception that only people who are from very good colleges or people who are very good at data structures and algorithms before college are getting hired with in those big MNCs, so I'd say that you are wrong. I know a number of people who are working in Google, but they are not from tier one, tier two colleges. They reach there just by their hard work, their sheer hard work. So yeah, practice in groups and compete within yourself, and participate in coding contests to get an idea that where you stand as compared to other people around the world.
Okay, thanks Priyank for answering that. So what do you think when you were in college and you were preparing for interviews, or when you were in a job, or say when you were in Bank Bazaar or your previous company and you were preparing for Google? So what do you felt the difference between these two scenarios, or was there actually any difference in the preparation strategy for you?
Yeah, I'd say that there are quite a lot of differences actually. Uh, I'll say that I've seen both pros and cons for it. So, firstly, the first difference was around the time that I invested in preparing. So, the time that I got to prepare for college placements was way more than what I got in my recent preparation when I was working. I remember that I used to study like literally full day on in preparing the interviews, or like at least 6 to 7 hours a day for preparation. But when you were working, when I was working, I was not getting that much of time. I was getting hardly like 2 3 hours a day, and that too if I do not feel too tired at the end of the day. As I have to go to office around like 9 hours, then it takes a lot of time, and then also I have to invest time in commuting. Also, I live in Bangalore, so I used to stay around like 11 kilometers from office, far from office. So just 11-kilometer round trip takes around 45 minutes each side. So I was investing heavily on the commute also. So yeah, like the major difference is that the time that I was getting for preparation in college was way more than what I got now, because of investing time in a lot of other things. And that difference was around motivation, that when I was preparing in college, I was not the only one preparing for the interviews. It was the placement season, and almost everyone around used to prepare for the interviews, right? So seeing myself not alone in the process gives me motivation. And also, if I'm stuck somewhere, if I'm not able to understand any solution, any editorial or stuff, then I can simply ask my friend and get the answer. So that way I'm not blocked on anyone on, or I can discuss things with people, and I can basically have a deep dive into the algorithm also. And these are things that keep me motivated during preparation in college. But yeah, now things were changed. It was not campus placement anymore. I was planning, I was preparing for it alone, and I was not having anyone with whom I can prepare, and which was actually not that motivating. Sometimes I used to procrastinate on things like maybe that I'm too tired today, let's do it tomorrow or over the weekend. So this is something that does not happen in college, because everyone else is doing that, and probably you have to be in sync with people so that you are not lagging behind in your preparation. So yeah, group studies is something that helps in this case. But yeah, motivation is another thing that I feel as a difference. Another difference was the pattern of the interviews, like on campus versus off campus interviews. So I sat for the on campus interviews in placements in college. So again, the advantages of on campus interviews is that companies comes to your college, and then you have to choose that in which companies you have to sit and apply for. But this like in this case, we the person, like in my case, I do not have to do anything. I just have to wait for companies to come so that I can choose. But now when you're working and when you're applying after a few years, it's actually the opposite. So The interviews are off campus, and the selection criteria also becomes hard, and the application process becomes harder. You like getting into the interviews, resume filtering, everything gets harder. And also, given that I was having around 4 years of experience, the expectations from the interviews have changed. So in college, the only expectation was that you have to prepare well in the DSA rounds, and you have to prepare your resume so that you can tell about your projects and stuff. But now, given that I have a few years of experience, the expectations from the interviews have changed. I was also expected to know about the system design. So I was having one more round everywhere, which is the system design round. And also apart from it, there is something called behavioral round, for in which they ask that whether you are a good culture fit or not, whether the projects that you have worked previously are some are good projects and you have learned some good skills there or not. So yeah, these also needs to be prepared at this time. um, there was one difference that I found on the positive side as well, that is regarding the awareness of the self strengths. Like when I prepared for the interviews again, like I have prepared for the interviews for the third time this time. Firstly, I prepared in college, and then I prepared for my switch, which was around 1 year after my college. So this was the third time. So when I prepared for the interviews again, I got to know about the areas where I am actually good at. So basically the areas which needs less revision, which the areas that I can tackle with confidence in an interview. So as I was not having much time in my preparation right now, so I think this was really helpful to get to know that what all your strengths are, and where actually you have to put more focus, and what you can probably skip and just tackle directly in the interview.
So Priyank, from what I know about you, you have worked with different companies in past. Like you have 4 years of work experience, and you have worked with a startup bank bazaar. You have worked with Amazon, and then you went on to join Google, right? So, do
Yeah.
you think what do you think is different in interview process or the interview rounds of these companies? Like from a personal point of view, I think that Google's interview is a bit the DSA questions in the Google interview are a bit tough and are more on the competitive programming side. Like if someone has experience in competitive programming, they will be able to easily solve those questions. So,
Yeah.
what is your
So
perspective on interview rounds of these companies?
I mean, I don't think so. Basically, it depends on the interviewer that what question they are asking. It's not that It's not that Google interviewers are specifically asked to ask hard questions or make the interview hard. It's more about the interviewer, that how the interviewer wants to take that round and what the expectation of the interviewer from that interview. So I'll say that given that I've given like a lot of interviews recently, like when I was preparing for Google, I'll say that the difference that I found in the interviews uh, that generally happen generally happen in these companies is that Google interviews are more like the people are more focused towards the growth. Like you first have to probably so the expectation is that whatever question the interviewer will ask, that will be a new question, and probably the person might not have heard it before. So given that you don't know the question before, it's very hard to get the most optimized solution in the first go. So probably what you can do is you can probably start from the brute force solution, and then you can see that how you can optimize that solution, and probably reach to a solution which is better time complex and space complex, and then code it, right? But in some other companies, like it might be the case that I've seen a lot of questions getting repeated in a lot of companies. I've seen that people directly answering the most optimal solution, given that they know it already. The level of questions is also something which changes as per the company. So if you'll go to lead code, you'll if you'll go under the tag Amazon, or if you'll go under the Google, you'll find a lot of hard questions. But if you'll go to other, like there are a few companies which generally repeat their questions. So the pattern for them is same. Let's say if some company asks uh, only trees question, or only trees and linked list and graphs and stuff. So that is something which is fixed, and if you prepare that stream, then we can have a better experience in that company.
Okay. So, Priyank, can you share some tips for the student, for the people who are already in a job, like who are in a service-based company, or who are already working in some other companies and want to switch to a product-based company, top product-based company, precisely, like Google, Amazon, Flipkart, Microsoft.
Yeah, so I think if you are switching from a service based company to a product based company, one of the major things that you have to work on is getting your resume selected. Like I've seen a lot of cases where HRs like probably reject the resumes from a service based company because they think that the kind of projects that these guys might have worked on are not something which will be useful for us. So the thing that I'll say that you have to work first, like the first thing that you have to work on is building a good resume. So for that, I think what you can see is given that you're already working, the thing that HRs or maybe someone from the recruitment team might see is your previous projects and your achievements, your open source work, or your competitive programming profile, if applicable. So I'll say that if you think that you are not doing the kind of project that will make you stand out, then probably now it's the time to revisit that, to have a look again and see that what you can do to showcase your profile better, right? Once you have done this, once you have built a good resume, once the HR is confident, when the recruiter is confident that they can probably invest time in you and you are someone who can go ahead with the interview process, then they'll start it. Now once you are in the interview process, like once you reach the interview room, then only it's your skills that will make you clear that round. So given that, like, now I'm assuming that you have already reached to the interview room. Now how to tackle the question in the interview, right? So before that, to prepare for the interview, I think I can give you a few tips about that. So I'll say that try to practice questions on pen and paper instead of or whiteboards instead of practicing it on a code editor. So basically what we use in our day-to-day work life, like, is some code editors where we write code and then we submit it, or we push it. And the way we practice coding in college and the way we write things in competitive programming is that if you're doing it on a website, it obviously has some editor where you can submit and where the code will run. So we generally have a practice of running things on code editors, right? So this is something that might be hard on you when you are in an interview, because given that they always give pen and paper or whiteboard or Google Doc or stuff, you might not get features like autocomplete, auto suggest, uh, features like syntax checking and stuff. So it's hard sometimes to perform well in the interview, given that you have always worked on the code editor. So one tip is that practice on pen and paper. Second thing is that if you have done a lot of competitive programming, so the main focus on competitive programming is that you focus on submitting the solution fast. So for that, what you do is that generally you keep the variable name short. You do not use the correct variable names. You do not restructure the code properly. You do not break the code into different small functions, which gives you meaningful results and all. So this is something which you do in competitive programming. But when you come in an interview, right, what the expectation is that you will write a modular clean code that is more readable and understandable by the interviewer, and also you will be able to explain it well. So I think one tip is also that your communication skills is something that really matters in an interview. So if you can work around that, if you can make sure that whatever you are thinking is something which the interviewer is able to understand, then it will be great. Like then you won't be like, let's say you came up with a great solution, you came up with a very good solution, but you are not able to explain it to the interviewer, then it's of no use. So yeah, have just to keep in mind that you have to practice on explaining a solution also. Also, one thing is that I've seen many times that people, let's say, I asked a question in an interview and the person is not aware of what algorithm or what data structure to use in it. So they generally get stuck and they kind of become blank and they just do not able to move forward and they, their brain just stop working. So I've seen this a lot of time. What I think you can do to avoid this is that at least start speaking the brute force approach, because obviously what people do is that whenever a question is given, they start thinking about the most optimized approach, right? So start thinking about the brute force one. Start thinking that how can you first make sure that the brute force is understandable, and then how can you work towards optimizing the brute force, and obviously the interviewer will guide you if they are aware that what you are thinking. So just keep the interviewer informed about what you are thinking, and so that they can keep a track on it. And obviously brush up everything, don't leave any important topic. If you want, you can leave some advanced data structures for last, like in case you do not have that much of time. But yeah, do brush up everything so that you just don't get blank in an interview.
Okay, so Priyank, as you have talked about resumes, so I would like to know, like, how did you get your resume shortlisted for Google? Have you applied on the website directly, or have you reached out to any recruiter, or you asked for a referral from someone you know, or how exactly did you get your resume shortlisted for the Google interview?
Yeah, so I think in my case, I was fortunate enough to get a. So like there was one Google HR which was connected with me on LinkedIn. So she told me about this open role in Google Bangalore office for a software engineering profile. So I just say like in my case, it was pretty easy because the Google HR approached me, and just after that, I just applied for that position and I prepared for it. So my case was
So,
fortunate, but yeah, in general, there is a website called careers.google.com. So generally, people apply from there, or if we know someone who is in Google and like a close friend or some ex-colleague or stuff, then probably referrals is something that can help to fast track the application.
so LinkedIn worked well for you, right?
Yeah, yeah,
What are some
LinkedIn
other
worked well in my
websites?
case.
Share some other websites with our viewers. Some other websites which do provide this recruitment facilities, like some third-party recruiters or where you share
No, no,
resume
I
with.
don't.
Hmm.
Uh, So yeah, I haven't seen any such third-party thing for Google as such, because in Google we like all the employees that will reach out to you are probably Google employees only. But I've seen a third-party thing for like many other companies. So I was applying for Amazon, right? So for my
Hmm.
Amazon interview happened through a third-party called InterviewBit. So I just followed up with InterviewBit, and they took all the pain of getting the like connecting me with the Amazon recruiters and then scheduling the interview and stuff. So for Google, there is no third party thing as far as I know,
Okay.
because
So
I think Google
there
hires
are
like
do third-party
lots of
recruiters
HRs.
from third-party recruiters for other companies and maybe other product.
Sorry, Harsh, your voice was not audible.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah.
So you were telling that there's no third-party recruitment team for Google, but there exists a third-party recruiter team or other companies like Amazon, Microsoft. They do accept resumes from third-party recruiters, right?
Yeah, so I'm aware of Amazon as such. I'm not very sure on the other companies, but yeah, for Google, I'm
Okay.
pretty much sure that there do not exist any third parties.
So I have one more important question for you. Like this is sort of a personal question. Like I have seen a
Okay.
lot of students. I have seen a lot of students who are in final year right now and preparing there for placements, right?
Hmm.
And we already know that there are very limited product based companies. Or if I talk about top product based companies, there are namely a few like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Flipkart, and there are very few companies which pay very high salaries to entry level software engineering jobs, right? But if I talk about the number of engineering graduates, this number is comparatively very huge, right? and everyone is running behind preparing for product based companies, and everyone wants to get into these companies right from the start. So even if they are placed in some other startups which are not in the list of these five or six companies, so they I have seen them getting depressed or not working properly in their current job to prepare for the interviews of these companies. So what do you like to tell to those students, or what is your opinion on this?
Yeah, so I think I was not aware that such thing such thing might happen. So I'd say that I personally think that I was also in such a I was also a part of such companies which were not in the list of top 5 or 6 or FAANG for the initial 4 years of my career. So I don't think there is any point of getting depressed or thinking that I'll not work properly because I'm not in the list of the companies who are who have a good brand name. uh, I don't think like there is no I mean, I'm not very sure that why exactly people are thinking that. Obviously the kind of work, the kind of learning that you are having, like, that the person will have in a startup will be, I think, equivalent or probably more than what people generally have in MNCs, right? So I remember in my case, personally, I'll say that whatever I learned in Bank Bazaar in 3 years is something which is I mean, is something that I don't think that uh, I'll be forgetting so easily. So like I learned so much of technologies. I learned that how to deploy your own service in production. I've deployed my services myself, and I don't think that given like in the big MNCs you will get these chances because the services here are having like so much of load, and probably you will need a lot of approvals also before even touching that production code base. So yeah, I think that if you work in a company which is not that that big of a brand name, then probably you'll get more roles and responsibilities, and you'll need less approvals basically to move changes around. As the organizations get bigger, you'll need to manage across the approvals, and you'll probably have to talk to more and more teams before making a small change. So I don't think that there's something that needs to be worried about. Yeah, if you think that you are learning good there, then I think you are good to go.
Okay, as you said, if I summarize what you said, so basically the idea is to, in early stage of your career, we should focus more on learning, right? Rather
Yeah,
than preparing for interviews and and making a switch to product-based companies. It is a goal for sure for every computer science graduate. If someone wants to do a job, it is a goal to get into those top tech companies, right? But it must not be the only aim in someone's life, right? We
yeah,
should
so I
focus
mean,
more on learning.
if you work good, if you think you're doing good, and I mean, it's just a matter of giving interviews and getting to those companies, so that you can do anytime. The main thing that you should focus, then anyone can focus, is around learning. If they are able to learn in that small company, in that small startup on it, as long as you're able to do that, I don't think that like the brand name is a problem. Anyways, if you think that that is something which is making you sad or like making you feel depressed, then probably you can try giving it a shot, that how your interviews go.
So, Priyank, let's start taking questions from the comments. A lot of users
Yeah,
are asking questions to you.
yes, yes, yes,
Those
definitely.
questions. So, first question is from someone named Anonymous Shoot, asking that how you prepared for
Okay.
system design or system design rounds.
Yeah, so for system design, I'll say that the preparation is mostly done by like when you work on something, right? When you work on a project or when you work on a product end to end, then you know a lot, then you get to know a lot about the system design by the product itself. So in my case, in Bank Bazaar, the in like Bank Bazaar was probably like a small company, and we have to manage the whole end to end things there. So uh, I was totally aware of the whole system and like the kind of the infrastructure that they use there. and I think that helps quite a lot when I was preparing for system design. I was aware of the basic chunks that are available, and all I have to do is that I have to sharpen the knowledge that I have so that it's kind of presentable in the interviews, right? So I was having like bit of knowledge of every part of the production system. It's just that I have to strengthen it. So if I know that there is a very good course called Grokking the System Design Interview that I had a look at. If you want, I mean, I can probably comment the link down here somewhere. The link is the website is called Grokking the System Design Interview, and that contains a lot of system design questions, like designing Uber, designing a library, and like a lot of system design. So yeah, probably you will feel more confident if you'll go through that website once.
Okay, you may share the link with me as well. Like I can add that in the description. So
Sure, sure, definitely.
there's one more question here. Vishnu Hemant is asking that can we increase our chances to get placed in Google, for example, using Golang, Flutter, etc. Because these technologies are developed by Google.
Oh, so I'll say that given that these technologies are open source and they are developed by Google, the interview process for any profile is standard. Like it's more like that you'll have a few coding rounds, and then you may or might not have a system design, and basis on the results of your performance in that coding round, you might or might not get the offer. So I mean, it's good that if you're working on open source technologies by Google, I'm not. I think it won't make much of a difference in the interviews, because the interview process is not considering this thing in interview, that whether you have worked on a Google open source technology or not. It's something which is common for everyone, that for a software engineer profile, you need to have a coding rounds. You need to have like certain coding rounds as well. So yeah, until unless you have clarity, like if you perform well in the coding rounds, then there's a very high chance of clearing the interviews.
Okay. So Gaurav Goel is asking that how to manage the last 10 days before the interview, before an interview.
Okay, so yeah, managing time before the interview, like as the interview comes closer, right? The stress keeps increasing, and obviously, 1 or 2 days before the interview, you almost go blank, and you'll be like, okay, now I don't remember anything. I don't know that what to do, what will happen in the interview. So again, for I think this question is more about how to relieve your stress before the interview, right? So again, I won't say things like yoga and all, because I didn't do it myself. uh, I'll say that probably just try to keep your calm, talk to your friends. I mean, just think that interview as something which is not, I mean, just think as a Google interview as normal other interview. Like, don't think as this as an end of your career, or if you won't get into the interview, if you do not clear it, you'll be like in trouble or something. Just try to think that it's a normal interview in a company, and you have to go and give your best. Apart from giving your best, you literally can't. You literally can't control your luck, or you literally can't control that what is the expectation of the interviewer in that round. Sometimes it happens that when you hear the question, you hear the question wrong, or you do not properly know the like what exactly the person is expecting, so you go in the wrong direction. So yeah, that all thing happens. But yeah, I'll say that just give like a lot of attention to what the interviewer is saying, what the question is asked, because sometimes the interviewers have like they like they leave some ambiguity in the question, so that the candidate is that candidate finds that ambiguity and clarify it. So yeah, before the interview, just be sure, be
So
confident,
so
and
the general idea is to not panic and to keep
yeah,
calm.
yeah, correct.
So so I like the statement that you just spoke in this answer, that the your luck might not work for you, right? So do you think that luck also plays a role in your interviews? Like does luck also play a role in your interview?
Yeah, luck also plays a big role, I'll say. Because sometimes what happens that you sometimes the question comes and you probably have an idea that okay, you probably these are the questions that these are the things that might work in this question, because you might have done similar kind of questions, or you might know that this algorithm works in this kind of question, so you can directly apply that. But sometimes it happens that it's a entirely new question, or it is something that you skipped while preparing for interviews, right? So you do not prepare everything. There is always some part that you skip. So it might be from there. Other things might be that if you are explaining something and somehow there happens miscommunication and the interviewer is not very sure that you are able to tell the correct things or not. So that is also something which can go in any direction. Also, it might happen that you I mean whenever you see a question, right, the first thought that you think is of a brute force solution. So even if you are not getting the brute force, then you might get blank. So in that case, how do you proceed ahead? How do you ask the interviewer for a hint? And also, I mean, your actions actually take a toss when you are in fear. So I'd say luck is something that in not in Google interview, I think in every interview, in majority of the aspects of life, luck is something which plays a big factor. But yeah, obviously, if you have worked hard enough, then there's a very high chance that you'll know the solution and you can probably go ahead with that.
Okay, so I also completely agree with the fact that luck matters. Luck matters a lot, or luck plays a major part in your interviews, right? But I also feel at the same time that there are a few things that people are not aware of, or people are not concerned of, and they just blame simply a lot of things on luck, right? Because as you also have said that writing clean code is very much important, but people are not very much aware or very much concerned about this fact that they might also get rejected in an interview, even if they have written a clean code, but the code was not clean. He was not able to communicate his
Yeah,
approach to the interviewer, right?
correct. Yeah,
It is most likely that those persons will get rejected in the interview, despite of telling the correct code or despite of writing the correct code, because with the increasing competition and with the increase in such huge competition, these companies, like the top companies, might lose on a potential candidate even if they have a slight confusion, right?
yeah.
the,
So I
they
mean,
won't.
it's not. Yeah, it's not
Mhm.
just that if you write unclean code, then you will get rejected. I mean, when the person is taking interview, when during the whole interview process, we get a lot of signals that is this person good in coding? Is this person good in testing? Is this person able to dry run the code well? Is this person are you able to write the syntax as well and stuff? So yeah, there's a lot of things apart from a readable code. But yeah, if at all there is a chance. I mean, obviously this thing goes in review, right? That the code was not modular, the code was having one big function that was doing everything, and things like that. So yeah, given that the interview, I mean, even in the
And
recent time, right,
obviously, if there
in
are
the
limited openings, and someone has already these qualities, like a group of people, say 2 to 3 people, were very good at writing clean code and were very good at presenting their solution. So it obviously leaves a good impression on the interviewer.
yeah, and
These
obviously one
things
thing is
count
that
in.
given that this time like it's a corona time, and probably the openings are less, and the competition is very huge for those openings. So at this time, if there is any small thing which the interviewer feels is lacking, then probably there's a chance that other person who have done it well might get ahead of the competition.
Okay, okay. So let's take some more questions. Like
Yeah.
Chandan Nayak is asking that I have been working as a Python full stack developer for the last 2 years. Do I need to learn Java or C++ for SD or SD2 prof, and how to prepare for system design as I don't work on high scale distributed systems?
Okay, so regarding the language, I'll say that Google do not expect to like whenever you are giving interview, right, they don't expect you to code in a certain language. uh, I mean, given that a lot of code internally might be in Java or C++ or any other language, they won't expect you to know that language beforehand, right? So I for this question that do you need to learn Java and C++ given that you are working in Python, I'll say that you just feel comfortable in giving the interviews in Python. There is no requirement as such. You can just tell the recruiter that you want to give the interviews in Python. Regarding preparation for system design, yeah, as I said, like in the previous question, for system design, given that you haven't worked on the large scale distributed system, you probably have to study it from the online resources which are available, right? So again, I'll share a link with Harsh that grokking the system design course that I took. I think that is a good starting point, and probably you can go ahead and just have a look at it, and probably you'll get some more idea that how high scale distributed systems work. Once you have a basic idea of the blocks, of different building blocks that are there in the infrastructure, then you can work on actually designing some system, or maybe have practicing it more on from your side. This way only you can get more and more accustomed to thinking about the system design solutions.
Okay. So someone named Fan Guy is asking that what is the roadmap for DSA for first year students? Like, would you
Yeah.
like to say something to the first year students?
Yeah, so given that you are in first year, you have a lot of time to prepare for your interviews. I'm assuming that you are at least a BTech person, so you have like 4 year course, so you have at least 3 years in hand. I'll say that you are in first year, so start with so you can start preparing DSA. You can start with competitive programming, and you can do at least it. You can do it at least for like the next 1 or 1.5 year, and then you can move on to interview preparation. Now, to start with the competitive programming, I'll say that you can start with any of the websites. I think uh, so. I'll tell you that the way I started with something a website called Code Forces when I was after my first year in college, which was around June 2012, which is like 8 years from now. So yeah, so I started in Code Forces, and I practiced in Code Forces and Code Chef for some time, and then I started taking part in the long and short contests that are there on those websites. So once I started doing that, I gained more confidence on DSA, and I learned like a lot of things about the algorithms, about the different kind of use cases that each and every algorithm has, especially graph algorithms, that you have to infer from the question that okay, this question might be of graph, this here DFS BFS might work and stuff. So once you do that, you will get a lot of idea about the practical implementations of DSA. Now after you prepare, like, after you have uh, competitive programming for a year or 1.5 year or so, then you can go ahead with preparing for interviews, right? Because competitive programming and preparing for interviews are a very different ball game. So for preparing interviews, I'll suggest obviously Geeks for Geeks is the website that I used for my preparation, and I'll also suggest you for that. Now they have also introduced something for practicing the questions also there, so you can even try that. Given that you have to write code somewhere, right? So yeah, since you have time for interviews, you can try having this route, preparing, like practicing uh, competitive programming first, and then go for interviews.
Okay. Thanks for mentioning Gigs for Geeks, by the way. So, since we just talked about a roadmap for college students, right? So, I have seen that a lot of students run behind different fields like machine learning, data science, and all of those stuffs. But if I talk about the practical scenario, like a recent survey by some company, or if you go online and check the number of openings these companies have, or the number of
Mhm.
openings we have for freshers specifically, so is comparatively very less. There are very few openings in top product based companies or startups combined. There are very few
Okay.
openings for freshers for these particular roles, like for a data scientist role or for a machine learning engineer role. So, what
Okay.
would you like to talk? What would you like to say to those people who are looking to prepare, who are looking to build a career in these domains? Like, should they first go for a software engineering role, or if they want to build a career around these fields? So if they must go for masters, or what should they exactly do?
So I think this is a very subjective question that whether it needs further studies or is it okay to get into job right now. So I'll say that it totally depends on the person. If they feel that they are very confident that they actually love doing things on data science and they want to have a career on AI, robotics, data science and stuff, then I think it's okay. They can probably, so I know that the number of profiles are less, but what they can do is they can so one good thing is that this thing will make their resume stand out of the other resumes, given that they have already worked on some projects on this. So yeah, if you will see that that like the general projects are written in everyone's profile, right, that they have built such and such system using these languages. But if you have built something which is ML based, AI based, then probably the HR will be more convinced that probably they can give more weightage to your profile. So this is one advantage, that your resume will get more eyes. And second thing is that I'm not very sure that whether they'll be okay with joining as a software engineer first and then switching the profile, because that will be a sudden change in the career. So what they can do is probably if they want, they can do some research work under some prof under in college or stuff, and then they can go, instead of software engineering, they can go for research profile if at all they want. So in that way they'll be under the same thing, like they'll be doing research and ML, and once they are okay, they can apply for a job. And yeah, if at
Okay.
all they think that they are okay with the with starting their career as a software engineer, then obviously they can apply and get a job there.
Okay. So Priyank Mungra is asking that, is third year too late to start competitive programming,
uh,
or have you done
so
competitive programming in your college? Tell me first. Like, have you done competitive programming in your college?
yeah, so in college I used to do comedy programming. So I started with the Code Forces, as I said. So I started with Code Forces, Code Chef, and these are the two major sites where I used to practice. And apart from that, I also prepared practiced on Spodge, HackerRank, and Hacker Earth, and other some other. So there were a lot of online challenges that used to happen in these websites. So yeah, I was pretty keen on taking part in them. Uh, for answering the question, is third year too late to start competitive programming? I think no. Given that you are preparing for interviews which are towards the end of the fourth year, I think you still have a whole complete 1 year in your hand. So yeah, you can do this thing. You can start competitive programming. You can do it for the next 6 months. And once you, so what competitive programming will do is that it will strengthen your DSA skills. Once you go to the website, once you solve a few questions, then your brain will automatically start thinking towards that direction. Whenever you see something which is getting repeated, your brain will automatically think that, okay, let's try to see if there is some DP in this. So this is how things work. This is how competitive programming trains you. Once you do like a few questions on certain topic, then you will probably start thinking about in that direction only. So yeah, you can do competitive programming for the next 6 months, and then once you have some idea about the different algos and data structure that exist, then you can go ahead with the interview preparation, because that also needs some kind of polishing on your competitive programming skills. So that might be a good plan for you, Priyank.
Okay. So so Priyank, I would like to add one more question along with to this particular question. Like, there are a lot of people preparing for interviews, right? Say if someone has not done competitive programming in their college, like they didn't even knew about competitive programming. If I talk about third tier colleges, so there are colleges where people even don't know about competitive programming. I don't know about current scenario, but when I was in college, I was from a third tier college, and there was no culture of competitive programming, right? So if I talk about those students, so and I talk about interviews as well. So we know that from the point perspective of interviews, all we need is a coding question. We are given a coding question, and they based on data structures algorithms, and we need to solve it within a given time, right? So
Yeah.
we need is programming skills. But competitive programming, talking about competitive programming, it do helps a lot in solving skills, but is not enough for problem solving skills. Like people who have not done competitive programming, or and have
Sorry,
not done
Harsh.
competitive programming in their college,
Yeah, your
to
voice is
prepare for
like
software
bit
engineering.
breaking. Yeah,
Hello.
can
So
you
I was
repeat the
telling,
question again? Yeah.
yeah, so I was telling that what if someone has not done competitive programming in their college and they are already graduated? So, and for software engineering interviews, all we need is good problem solving skills, right? Where we need
Hmm.
to solve a problem in a given amount of time, right? So, is competitive programming the only way to develop problem solving skills, or we can do it by other means as well? Like we can do it by simply practicing coding questions, by allotting them a specific amount of time ourselves, or by taking part in other contests which are not true entirely based on competitive programming.
Yeah, so correct. I'll say that the like this is a question that a lot of people ask, that is competitive programming a must to have to get selected in the software engineering interview. So I'll say that the answer is no. I know a lot of people. I have a lot of colleagues who are working with me, and like they do not do competitive programming. They simply prepare for the interviews, and they just do it really well and clear the interviews. So again, what competitive programming is do is that they create a good backbone, a good background, so that you can have a prior knowledge that how things work, how to optimize the solution so that it passes the online test cases online. I mean, the advantages that you will have with competitive programming is that your brain will start thinking about the optimized solution in a probably in a faster way. So again, if you can achieve the same thing with practicing directly, then you can go ahead with that. Generally, people do competitive programming because they love it as a sport. Again, they love to get a competition between people from the same country, from different countries and stuff. So they are very much fascinated about seeing their rankings. That okay, I scored in top 10 in this contest, I scored in top 100 in this world contest and stuff. So that's more of a sport. If you really like programming and if you think you have enough time, then you can go ahead with that. Also, it will strengthen your concepts, obviously, no doubt. But yeah, if you do not have time, if you haven't done it already, if you want to prepare directly for interviews, you can just go ahead with that. There are a lot of websites which can help you doing interview preparation. So yeah, uh, that directly is something which is absolutely valid, and people really do that. So there is no harm in that.
Okay, thanks for validating this and throwing some light on this topic. Like I have seen a lot of people who are confused, and a lot of people who are even demotivated to start preparing for interviews because they have not done competitive programming in their college and are working in some service-based companies right now, and they have no
Mm.
clue on where to start. Even if they want to start competitive programming, they have no clue on where to start. So, having said that, like even if someone is good at competitive programming or someone is good at competitive programming, it brings a lot of disadvantages if we talk about from the perspective of preparing for interviews, right? Because when you are taking part in a coding contest, all you care about is solving code in the minimum amount of time possible. You mess up with the code quality, you don't care about proper indentation, the variable naming, and all such
Yeah.
stuffs. So even if you are a competitive programmer, you must follow these particular things as well in your mind, right?
Yeah. Also, one more thing is that, yeah, obviously your code needs some polishing, and also you need to develop the skill of explaining your code to the interviewer, to the person asking. That is something we don't do in competitive programming. We just write whatever we want, and this is generally which is actually concerning. That if you write a very good code, if you get the most optimized code ever, but you are not able to be able to explain it to the interviewer, then probably that is something which is not up to the expectation. So this is also one thing that
Can you
people doing
share some
competitive programming.
can you
Mhm.
share some tips on how can someone practice the art of competitive programming? Like how can someone develop this problem solution, or what they're actually thinking about when they are trying to do that?
Yeah, so for this, I'll say that just uh, uh, just keep the interviewer involved in the discussion. I mean, don't do like you are waiting for thinking the solution in your head, and once you are done, like after let's say at t equal to 0 you started, and just do not speak at t equal to 10 when you invested those 10 minutes in thinking about the solution. Keep the interviewer involved, keep them aware that okay, I'm thinking this, so this would be my next step, so that the interviewer is at the same page and they can also tell you whether you are going right or not. Remember, you don't need to explain it in a very good English or stuff. You just need to read your code and just explain it to the interviewer in a very simple language. It's not like you have to showcase your speaking skills. It's more like you have to explain your code, right? So just focus on explaining your code in very simple words. And yeah, that's it. I think if you try to develop that skill, it will be all good.
Okay, thanks Priyank for explaining it. If you are receiving any new information, please repeat it. So, I think we can end this session now. So, thank you, Priyank, for being on this session and explaining your journey and talking about your journey and explaining a lot of things which needed explanations specifically. If I talk about the competitive programming scenario specifically, there are a lot of questions in the comment itself. Like, what if I am not in competitive programming? How should I prepare for interviews? So I think it was a much needed question. So
Oh yeah, cool.
thanks for explaining these questions in most basic way possible. So and explaining it very clearly. So thank you today for being here today.
Yeah, cool, great. Thanks a lot, Harsh, and thanks Team Geeks for Geeks for hosting the events like this. I really think that these are important, and yeah, people will like they really will take some takeaways from this session. So yeah, cheers.
Okay. So thanks. Bye.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Thanks. Bye bye.